There's a lot of controversy when it comes to ranking the 5 featherweight champions in UFC history, and I actually went through in yesterday's video and ranked my top 10 featherweights of all time. But I think a more interesting conversation is talking about who was the best featherweight at their peak. So ignoring longevity, ignoring the number of wins, the number of title defenses, if you could pick one featherweight, for a period of time in their career to beat everyone else in the history of the weight class, who would you pick and why? So in today's video, I'm going to be ranking the 5 champs based on their peak, just how dominant, how great they were at one moment in their career. Would love to hear your thoughts. If you agree, disagree, let me hear it. If you enjoy the video, hit that like button and subscribe. But starting off here at number 5 at the bottom, I am going to go with Jose Aldo. Now, he's someone who definitely benefits from, having great longevity, has a ton of title defenses, believe 3 in the WEC, 7 in the UFC. But I also think he's someone where I don't know if there's a clear peak. And I was kind of battling between his peak, maybe in terms of the skill set he was showing, versus him actually going in and beating truly elite competition. So the peak that I chose, I'm just looking at back-to-back fights in their career. I chose the Chad Mendes, Frankie Edgar title defenses back-to-back. So I think this did combine impressive performances with wins against top competition. So the Chad Mendes fight, this was a round 1 knockout, nasty, knee knockout right at the end of the first round, defending takedowns, and then just blasted Chad Mendes with a big knee on the break from the clinch. And then the Edgar fight was a 49-46 decision on 2 scorecards. And at this time, Chad Mendes was a legit high-level title challenger. He was 6-0 in the UFC and WEC combined. And then after he lost to Jose Aldo, he proceeded to win his next 5 fights before getting the rematch. And 4 of those were finishes. The first 3 were knockouts in under 2 minutes in all 3 of them. So Chad Mendes was legit. He was beating everyone else aside from Jose Aldo. And then for Frankie Edgar, he had back-to-back title fights at 155 leading into this matchup where he lost controversial decisions in both of them. And then after he lost to Jose Aldo in his first fight at 145, he proceeded to go on a 5-fight win streak against Charles Oliveira, BJ Penn, Cub Swanson, Uriah Faber, and then Chad Mendes. In these matchups, Jose Aldo showcased his elite takedown defense, where these two guys, both very good wrestlers, when he combined 2 for 18 on takedowns. He wasn't quite the same leg kicking Jose Aldo you saw in the WEC and super early on in the UFC, but he was still mixing in the leg kicks way more than he does now. Obviously, the nasty knees, was a super explosive athlete at this time. I think the issues for Jose Aldo are just overall his peak cardio. Now, some of the cons I think you can draw from other points in their career, just because a 2-fight sample size where they're dominant, I don't think is enough, to fully find all their issues. So I think cardio could be a concern. Not that he had bad cardio, just compared to some other guys who have elite cardio. Don't know if he was going to hold up. I also think he's undersized. The fact that Jose Aldo was able to move down to 135 after his time at featherweight, I do think is telling. I don't think any of the other champions here could make 135 while still breathing and living. Ilia Topuria, he's not going down. Volk, maybe, but I still don't think he's getting there. Holloway, no shot. Conor McGregor, no shot. And then also for Jose Aldo, it's just tough because I think his skill set kind of matches up very poorly with some of the other greats. For Jose Aldo, if these other top featherweights were super wrestling heavy, super grappling heavy, I think he'd have a great shot because his takedown defense was so great. But the top 4, they're all primarily strikers. So matchup wise, I just don't think peak Aldo, fares well against some of these other dudes. Now at number 4, I'm going to go with Max Holloway. And the peak that I'm talking about here is the second Jose Aldo fight into the Brian Ortega fight. You could have said both Aldo matchups, but I do think the second Aldo fight was a more dominant performance. And then also he showcased, some different skills in the Ortega fight. And this was a Max Holloway who just absolutely weaponized his cardio. The confidence that this man was fighting with at the time was insane. It was almost like arrogance. You look at him just going out there and styling on Jose Aldo. He did not care what Aldo was throwing back. I mean, he's showing Brian Ortega how to block in the middle of a championship title fight. He had a great jab. He would just break guys down round after round, start off by kind of just picking at you from the outside. And then as you started to get tired, he started to gain momentum. He would, lengthen his combinations and really just break dudes down and break down high level fighters. And at this point, like, this was when his durability was absolutely insane. He was taking big shots from Jose Aldo. Ortega stung him a few times. And these are like not fighters with no finishing upside. Like Jose Aldo, Brian Ortega, both very dangerous, and Max Holloway was just eating everything that was coming at him. And the reason why I chose the second Ortega fight was because he was really able to show the grappling defense. Ortega went 2 for 11 on takedowns. Holloway was never really in danger against someone who is, very, very dangerous on the ground, especially with their jiu-jitsu. And then Ortega at the time, like, maybe people have a lesser opinion of him. At the time, he was 7-0 in the UFC with all finishes. So like, this was him really shutting down a truly elite high-level prospect. I want to say that Brian Ortega might have even been the betting favorite in this fight. And I mean, Max Holloway just butchered him for 4 rounds before he ended up getting finished. And then the Aldo fight was a round 3 knockout. Now, I think the issues here for Max Holloway are pretty clear. He's just too hittable, where he's very reliant on his durability. And it's okay against some fighters, but when you start to face some real heavy hitters, that I think does become an issue if you are relying on, just taking damage. And then also, I just think the lack of grappling upside is somewhat of a hit, where if things aren't going great for him on the feet, he's not someone who's going to be able to, turn around and start wrestling, start grappling. I just don't think he has that in his bag. So if he can't outstrike his opponent, it is going to be an issue for him. So Max Holloway comes in here at number 4, but I can promise you, no one wants to face this version of Max Holloway. The pace, the pressure, just seems like an absolutely awful opponent to have to fight. Now at number 3, this might be controversial. I am going to go with Conor McGregor. And I think Conor McGregor has this reputation where it's like the longevity's not there, but if I had to pick any featherweight, the Conor McGregor that fought Jose Aldo, like, that's my guy. And I don't think that's crazy, right? This is a very high peak. You had the round 2 KO against Chad Mendes, and then the 13-second knockout against Jose Aldo. And this Conor was special. He had elite distance management. He was such a sharp and fluid striker. He had a deep bag of kicks. His straight left was just an absolute weapon. And then also his confidence was just on another level. I mean, he'd be dismantling dudes before they even got in the octagon with his trash talk. But I do think we have to point out some of the potential cons here for Conor McGregor that we never really got to see in a small sample size at 145. I think we know, after him going up fighting Nate Diaz, that cardio was somewhat of a concern. Now, we did see it a little bit in the Mendes fight, like he was fading, but I mean, Mendes was fading worse in that fight. I also think takedown defense is potentially an issue. He was taken down 4 times by Chad Mendes. That was on short notice for Mendes. I will say, I believe McGregor was fighting with an 80% torn ACL, so it's not like he was 100%, but we've seen in later fights, like, he just does not have great takedown defense. And these are just, issues we never really saw at 145 because he didn't consistently fight in that weight class. If he had defended that title a few more times, maybe we could have seen these issues come to light. Like, if he had to fight Max Holloway, it's possible he nukes him. It's also possible that Max Holloway survives, the first couple of rounds, and all of a sudden Conor McGregor is in a bad spot. So I do think I would still pick McGregor, obviously, over Jose Aldo. And then I still think I would pick him over Max Holloway, although matchup-wise, it's not great. And, like, he could go out and knock out Alexander Volkanovski. He certainly could go out and knock out Ilia Topuria, but he doesn't have the grappling upside. I think there are some issues with him getting taken down, potentially fading late in championship rounds. So those are my concerns for McGregor. He's going to come in here at number 3 for me. Now at number 2, I'm going to be going with Alexander Volkanovski, and I think maybe you could make a case for a slightly different peak. I actually have the Max Holloway 3 fight into the Islam Makhachev fight. Kind of crazy that I have a loss in here, but I think going up and, having that type of performance against the now pound for pound number 1 is extremely impressive. If you don't like the idea of a loss being in here, then you could just go before Max Holloway 3 and say Korean Zombie, Max Holloway. But I do think grappling-wise, like, he showed some stuff in that Islam Makhachev fight. Starting off with the Max Holloway one, though, I mean, he outclassed an all-time great fighter for 5 whole rounds, and then went on to lose a razor-close decision to, at the time, the number 2 pound-for-pound fighter in the world. I do think this version of Volkanovski is just an all-time great striker. He manages range so well. He mixes up his targets. His timing was very impressive. I mean, he's going up in weight and dropping a guy like Islam Makhachev, just beating the brakes off of Max Holloway on the feet. Obviously, he never got the finish there, but very, very few people have the power to actually hurt Max. I mean, you're looking at Ilia Topuria, and then you're looking at like Dustin up at 155, Gaethje up at 155. Those are hard hitters up a weight class. It is going to be tough, to actually deal damage to Max Holloway that's going to make him hit the ground. And then I also think, like I said with the Islam Makhachev fight, he showcased some of the wrestling upside, the great defense, where it's not like he stuffed every shot against Islam Makhachev. He was still controlled. But when we're talking about him down at 145, I have a really tough time seeing any 145er that's ever fought in the UFC, ever fought in MMA, that's going to go in there and just rack up control time and dominate him on the ground. I just don't think that would happen, and I do think he showcased that in that matchup. Some of the issues here for Volk, I don't think he has otherworldly durability, and maybe you could say, it's because he got head kicked by Islam Makhachev. He got caught clean by Ilia Topuria. But even before that, I don't think he had like this Max Holloway level durability. He was dropped in the Chad Mendes fight. He was clipped a couple of times in the second Max Holloway fight. So we're kind of nitpicking here. It's not like he has a bad chin or anything, but he just doesn't have like that durability where you're just not concerned even when he does get hit hard. And I also just don't think he has the elite finishing upside. Like when we're looking at the best guys he's faced, the Max Holloways, even a guy like Brian Ortega, he's not finishing those fights, doesn't have much submission upside. And then also just power-wise, just not someone who's like hitting you with bricks in his hands. But over a 5-round fight, good luck beating Alexander Volkanovski. And then at number 1, I don't know if this is going to be controversial or not. I have Ilia Topuria. The peak is pretty clear. It's his last 2 fights, the knockout wins against Volkanovski and Holloway. I think there's a case that these are the best back-to-back wins in MMA history when you're talking about the quality of competition and the actual performances, the results. A round 2 knockout against Volk, and then a round 3 knockout against Holloway. Ilia is just such a complete fighter. He has the excellent boxing, super powerful hooks, not a super high volume kicker. Like he really is not kicking to the body. He's not kicking up top, but he does have very, very heavy leg kicks. He's very defensively responsible. He gets in this like super grounded base where he's able to load up his shots, can explode at any moment. He's extremely scary near the fence, where if your back is on that fence, you are going to be in trouble against him, very similar to a guy like Dustin Poirier. And then I also think he just has like some untapped grappling upside, where you look at the way he thoroughly outgrappled Bryce Mitchell, submitted him. He went to it a little bit against Max Holloway, landed a few takedowns, wasn't really racking up control time, but I do think that's a skill set where in certain matchups, like potentially Conor McGregor, he could use that when we're looking at peak versus peak. We know he has A-plus power. I'd probably say the hardest hitter at 145. Maybe someone wants like a Josh Emmett, Jeremy Stevens, but when we're actually talking about like practically being able to land that power consistently, I feel like you have to give it to Ilia Topuria. He has that finishing upside against the best of the best, going in, only man to ever beat Volk at 145, and he finishes him. And like you could say maybe the durability was a question mark after the Islam fight. I think that punch he landed is putting pretty much anyone out. And then we saw him do it against Max Holloway, someone who's known for having a legendary chin, and he goes out there and he hits Max, and you just see it's a completely different reaction than anyone else we've seen Max Holloway fight. And it does just seem like it's a matter of time before he lands that big punch. It's not like he was outclassing Volkanovski or outclassing Max Holloway in those early rounds. It's going to be tough to do that against those guys. But the fact that, he's competitive in these rounds, I think he won the first 2 against Max, even though I thought it probably should have been 1-1. I believe Volk won the first one against him in round 1. But he just has that neutralizing factor where he could be losing every round. And if he lands that one shot, you are going to be in trouble. I don't think there are any clear, problems with Ilia, this peak form. Now, to be fair, it's probably just due to a lack of volume against high-level competition. When you look at someone like a Conor McGregor, we kind of found his flaws after he was done at 145. So maybe Ilia moves up, we see some of his potential issues. But with what we've seen so far, maybe you could say if you pick at him from the outside, you could win a decision, but good luck doing that without him landing that big shot, because that's kind of what Volk and Holloway were both trying to do. So if I had to pick one featherweight to take on anyone else in MMA history, I would take on the version of Ilia Topuria that fought Volkanovski and Max Holloway. I think you look at how he matches up against every other champion. I think he beats Jose Aldo pretty easily. I think we saw him fight Max Holloway. Now, maybe that's not peak Max, but still, I think it goes pretty similarly. Conor McGregor, I think, is a super fun fight, but I do think he would go to the grappling there and kind of just try to wear on McGregor's gas tank. Now, could Conor catch him? Sure. That's, kind of how these matchups go. If they fought 100 times, it's not like Ilya's winning 100, but I do think he would win more than half of them. And then Volk, we saw it. Even if that's not peak Volk, I still think it's pretty close to it in terms of his skill set, and Ilya got the W there. So that is going to wrap it up for my rankings. Let me know your thoughts. Who was your guys' peak GOAT featherweight? Let me hear it down below. Thank you all for stopping by, and I will see you in the next one.